Good morning. This is a public hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on Wednesday, July 8th, 2020, in accordance with the provisions of the Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Chapter 272. It's being broadcast live on Channel 18 and recorded for the archives. Today's hearing is being conducted by a remote video conference pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency orders. The agenda and copies of all documents for review today are posted on the town website. Since the start of the emergency period on March 10th, the Commission has scheduled applications for hearings in the order in which those applications have been received. I'm today exercising the authority conferred on me by Section 17B5 of the Act of 2020 as chair of the Conservation Commission to declare the following application has been scheduled for a hearing on August 26, 2020, 55 Sears Point Road. The hearing date will be sent out to everyone on the Conservation Division email list and posted on the town's website. If and as we are able to change the hearing schedule currently in effect, we will be notifying all applicants via email and will be posting notices on the town website. A reminder that persons watching on Channel 18 who wish to participate in this meeting while it's in progress may do so by calling the phone number that will be displayed on the screen. To all participants here this morning, I'm taking a look at, looks like most are, but if you are not yet, please mute yourselves. If you're on the phone, you may mute yourself by pressing *6 and press *6 again to unmute. As we consider each matter before the commission, I'll be asking for comments and questions first from commissioners and then from participants on the call. Please indicate you wish to speak by unmuting and stating that you wish to speak. And if I forget to ask for comments or questions, please speak up so we don't miss you. Know that the chat box function is not monitored, so it doesn't help to put a message there. All commission votes today will be by roll call vote. And so that we have a record of the quorum of commissioners attending today, I'll now ask each commission member to make their presence on this call known by stating present. Commissioner Kitts. You're muted, Joe. Okay. Commissioner Kitts? You're back to being muted. Okay, quick, while you're unmuted, are you here? Oh, he's got an audio issue. Let me come back to him in a minute. Commissioner Rawls?
Here.
Commissioner Del Vecchio?
Here.
Commissioner Clark?
Here, could you repeat the date for the 55 Sears Point Road? When Kelly went to mute me, it has a quick blackout period and I missed the date.
Okay, August 26th.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, Commissioner Kitts, are you with us? He's unmuted.
Janet, perhaps if there's an issue, maybe it's just better for him to call in.
Yeah, if you can hear that. Joe, if you can hear us, call in. We know he's here. How do we deal with marking him as here?
I saw him present while his video
he's on the list. He's here.
And
he's got an audio issue. He's unmuted.
I don't know what number I don't know the last 4 digits of his cell phone number if he is calling in.
It'd be a 703 number, I think. So it's a decent.
May I offer a suggestion, Madam Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Somebody write something on a pad of paper and hold it up so the camera picks it up and he can read it.
Okay. Hold on. I'm just seeing if I can reach him by text. Yeah, he's a 571 number, so he's not yet on there. Let me text. I'll just text him. Oh, okay. He says he hears us. He's here and he's going to call in. So he is here. So let's move on.
Okay. Amendments to orders of conditions, 38 Briggs Way, 38 Briggs Way Nominee Trust, SE 10-3196. This is phase 2 of the amendment process. Proposed relocation of approved elevated stairway to the location of the existing stone steps at 38 Briggs Way, Assessors Map 17D, Parcel B1.
Okay.
Yes.
David, are you with us? Oh, okay. Good
Yes, I
morning,
am.
David. Thank you.
Good morning. As Callie stated, this is part 2 of the amendment process. The Unisys withdrew the pier portion of the project, and so we really no longer need a set of stairs on the southern side of the property. That was where the sufficient depth of water was for a float. But they still would like an elevated aluminum stairway down to the water, and the best place to put it is over the existing granite steps on the north side of the property. It eliminates some of the problems of moving some of the revetment stones to get the fasteners for the post in. The existing granite steps lends itself to a much easier installation of the elevated stairway. All of the special conditions, all of the construction protocols all remain the same. I did notice an error in my profile. It doesn't match the conditions or the previous design. I have the middle platform at elevation 9. It's supposed to be at elevation 8. And the lower flight of stairs down to the water is supposed to end at mean high water, and the remaining steps are supposed to be granite. So I'll revise that profile to match the previous order conditions and the previous approval.
Okay.
But again, everything is really the only thing that's changing is the plan view location of the stairs. Everything else is the same.
So the existing granite stairs end above mean high water, or no, just below
actually
it? They go below.
They go right down. They right down to mean low water.
Right. Yeah. I see that.
To the toe of the revetment, which is just a little bit above mean low water.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea previously was to have no portion of the aluminum stairs below mean high water, and that makes sense just because of corrosion and whatnot. So the idea would be from the mid-level platform at elevation 8 down to mean high water. That section of stairs is removable. And so the previous conditions was that section be removed every fall and reinstalled in the spring. And then the steps from mean high water down to the beach, what little beach there is at low tide, would remain granite.
Okay. And there's no issue, because I'm looking at the elevation of the platform. Will that have? Oh, so you are lowering that so that the slope down to where it meets up with the existing granite steps won't be so steep.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yep.
Other questions, comments, commissioners, participants?
Delvecchio here.
Yep.
I'm just wondering why it's being done in the first place. For safety, David?
Yeah, the granite steps, I think they've moved over the years, so they're not entirely safe. I think it was kind of an afterthought during the construction process that they put those stairs in, and it was a good idea at the time, but there's been accretion down at the toe of the revetment over the last few years, and so it really lends itself to more access from the current owners. So they feel an elevated stairway with a rail is much more safer.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan and Mark, we're getting some sort of funky feedback. I heard it when I was talking, and I hear it now. I heard it when David was talking. I don't know what's causing it. It's a buzzy feedback. If you guys can figure out what that is, that would be great.
Janet, when you were
Yep.
talking, it was Tom's cell phone, which is why I muted him again. And
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the current cause is.
Yeah.
This is Ryan. Tom, if Tom's watching on his TV, if he could just turn his TV down, that sounds like it could be the issue. Some type of feedback coming back on the phone.
It's off. The volume is off on the television.
Okay, so to get rid of the feedback, you'll just have to remain in mute until you'd like to speak. Otherwise, there'll be a little bit of buzzing coming through the phone.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's
No
okay.
problem.
It changes week to week, our issues and challenges. Okay, Callie, do you have any other issues or questions for David on this one?
Yeah, David, I just had one question, and I'm having a bit of a issue. So if you've put it on your plan, I apologize. Is it possible, since you're sending just that minor revision on your plan, can you just show by some small like call out or something which portion of the stairs is seasonal?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
That's not a problem.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I had a question.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
In looking in, again, just online at various metal corrosion forums, I noticed that there seems to be an occasional problem noted with aluminum in that, especially when exposed to the highly corrosive environment of saltwater spray. And part of the corrosion is actually pitting. I didn't know if that had been taken into account in material selection.
They're aware of that, but it's a long-term corrosion problem, and since the lower section is removed every year, that's something they can easily monitor. The upper portion will get some salt spray, just like all the other aluminum ramps and stairs along this section of coastline. The town has stairs, and I believe those are aluminum also. Most dock ramps are aluminum now, so it's something that can be addressed seasonally when the lower section goes in, because that'll get the most exposure. But the owners are aware of that, and it is a maintenance concern. But because it's removable, any other material would be obviously heavier than aluminum, especially stainless steel. Ideally, we'd love to use stainless steel, but that leaves the problem of getting it apart and getting it up the revetment in the fall.
Thank you.
Well,
Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to continue this to the work session on August 5th for the review of the amended order of conditions?
Bob Rawls, move to the work session August 5th to review the amended ordinance.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote to continue the matter to the work session on August 5th. Commissioner Kitts? Oh dear. Commissioner Rawls?
Aye.
Commissioner Del Vecchio?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so that's 4-0, and we'll let Joe off the hook on this one until he gets himself sorted. All right. Moving on, Callie.
Okay, notices of intent, 335 Cedar Street, Robert E. and Catherine E. Lewis, SE 10-3417, after the fact filing for proposed hardscape between dwelling and garage with approximately 400 square feet of increased site coverage at 335 Cedar Street, Assessors Map 12B, Parcel 17.
Okay.
This is Russ Holden from Ryder and Wilcox.
Yes, good morning, Russ.
Good morning. May I give you a little history? An order of conditions was issued October 17th for the construction of the garage. It was amended April 12th, 2017 to include over 10,000 square feet of restoration and mitigation within the adjacent upland resource area. During the construction of the garage, the Lewises determined that an easier and better access for from the dwelling to the garage was needed, rather than as shown on the plan of record. The plan shows a transition being done by grading. During the early design stages, a covered entranceway was shown from the existing dwelling to the proposed garage. The walkway was not included in the final design, but the Lewises incorporated aspects of it in the hardscape covered in this notice of intent. You should have an as-built site plan dated March 6, 2020, showing the hardscape. There is an approximate increase in coverage of 400 square feet. Due to the limit of available planting area, we are offering 300 square feet of mitigation plantings off the southwest corner of the dwelling. The Lewises would add to the mitigation additional native shrubs planted below the 50-foot buffer where space is available if necessary. Regarding the hardscape in question, the work is between the 50 and 100-foot buffer from the top of the inland bank. It does not impair the physical stability of the bank, nor does it impair the habitat of rare or endangered plants, animals, species. It does not affect the capacity of the bank to provide breeding, habitat, escape cover, or food for wildlife. The construction of the patio, wall, and steps increases the existing coverage by approximately 400 as noted. The majority of the hardscape is buffered from the inland bank by the existing structures. The steps, walls will direct and control foot traffic and surface runoff from the resource area. The previously restoration within the aura has created a vegetated buffer strip for additional protection from the resource area. The area in question will not have an adverse impact on wildlife habitat, nor does it create a barrier to wildlife movement within and between the resource area.
All right, thank you, Russ. Questions from commissioners?
Yes, Bob Rawls. I guess the way I read the application for this was that 100 of the 400 square feet of mitigation was accounted for in previous mitigation. But I hear you now saying that the offer is to add mitigation to, or add plants to the previous mitigation area.
Basically, yes. There's very limited space for planting on this property. So I was noticing that there are some spots in the previous 10,000 square feet of mitigation where we could put some more native shrubs.
And you're saying that there is no room where this new 300 square foot of mitigation is proposed?
No, that's proposed. That will occur.
Well, I know it will occur, but you're saying that it would not be possible to add more mitigation to that area.
If you look at the plan, you can see it's rather tight. I guess we could go along the top of the border wall some more, string some shrubs or ferns along that.
Callie, can you, yeah, thank you. You're a couple steps ahead. So Russ, it takes that funny little 90-degree turn. What it would be possible to smooth that corner out and put some plantings there?
We could easily do that as long as we can allow access around the back to the deck. But yeah, right. we could fill that in.
Okay. I would, just because we don't have access to the original order, we don't have it digitally and we can't get into the annex. So I can't really, we don't have access to what mitigation was done. So I want to try to deal with this on its own merits. So if there's 400 square feet of impact from the patio and the walkway and the wall, can we bump up that, adding some more plantings so that it equals out?
We can do that.
Great. Bob, did you have other questions?
No, I think that's the way to go, because filling in previous mitigation doesn't really add mitigation.
Right. This compensates for the additional impact of the of the hardscape. So you can get us a little updated plan and we will proceed to preparing the order.
You'd like that by Friday, right?
Oh, this is going to go to the work session on August 5th.
Oh, okay.
So you have a bit more time than that to get it in. As long as it's in a week or two ahead so that we can get the order done, that'd be fine.
Okay, very good.
The sooner the better, actually. You know how that is.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, Joe's back now. Okay, excellent.
Janet, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
There's a drain within the cobblestone patio. Where does that drain out?
It goes to a dry well. I'm not sure exactly where, but I've been told that it goes to a dry well.
Within the patio?
Yes.
Okay, and I noticed some viburnum on the bank, on the 50-foot bank. Is there any way you could add more viburnum to that area?
That's what we were just talking about is that as far as this notice of intent, are you saying below the boulders or on top of the boulders?
No, below the boulders on the bank itself.
That's what I proposed, but I was just told that not to include that in the mitigation.
Okay.
That's the previous restoration
Right.
area.
We're trying to stay away from the previous because we don't have those plans.
Okay, terrific.
We'll hope that viburnum will continue to grow and will eventually.
Yes.
If it's anything like the viburnum I have here, it will spread and grow and fill that in.
That has grown a lot since this fall.
Good enough, thank you.
Other questions, comments, suggestions? Everybody comfortable with sending this to the work session for an order of conditions?
Yes.
Okay, yay, good to hear you, Joe. All right, so we have a motion then, same as before, continue to the August 5th work session to review an order of conditions.
Bob Rawls moved to go to the August 5th workstation for orders of conditions.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Clark, second.
Thank you. Roll call vote to continue to August 5th. Commissioner Kitts?
Yes.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Commissioner Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Let's continue to the August 5th work session. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 74 and 77 Sears Point, Patrick Brogan and Patricia Black, SE 10-3418, proposed construction of new driveway to existing guest house, implementation of a land management plan for invasive species control at 74 and 77 Sears Point, Assessor's Map 11A, parcels 10B and 11.
Good morning, Seth Wilkinson Ecological Design, here on behalf of the Brogans.
Seth, real quick before you get started, is it possible for you to turn off your video? We're having a little bit of a issue with streaming video from multiple people. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. Didn't want to be rude. So with me is Dave Clark, the engineer. As this is predominantly a ecological restoration project, normally I would go after the engineer. We thought it might make sense to start with the ecological restoration, and then Dave can cover the other more structural elements, if that's all right.
That's fine.
Would it be possible to get the restoration plan on there, Callie, or should I share that?
Sure, I can do that. Just give me 1 second.
Okay, no rush. You know this project from other approvals that had more to do with the home. This project adds about just under 30,000 square feet of restoration to the existing mitigation areas, which were approved under the permit SE 10-2797. So it essentially, as you can see, those lighter gray colored mitigation areas at either end. One was a knotweed area, and one was another heavily invaded upland location. We're now seeking to restore the remainder of the shoreline, which is also invaded, and link those two areas up, which I think will be a significant benefit to wildlife habitat in the area. We thought it would be wise to come in with a separate notice of intent, as this will take approximately 3 years to implement, as you know from other large-scale ecological restoration projects. And all of these minimally managed sort of naturalized areas, which do have a significant invasion in the wetland areas down by the ditch or stream corridor. There is a heavy invasion of a non-native white willow. You'll sometimes see that species growing along highway, sort of in the median strip of highways and wetter areas. There's also a substantial amount of shrub form of honeysuckle, Asiatic bittersweet, the usual sort of coastal invaders. And there will be, after the invasive species will involve essentially the stem by stem treatment, avoiding any native materials, which there are some remaining on the bank, fortunately. Those would be worked around, nothing more than restorative pruning. Oftentimes native species will become very leggy and unstable when they're sort of reaching for the sunlight and trying to get up above the invasive species, which is usually ultimately not a winning battle. But we find sometimes there needs to be a little bit of corrective pruning to get them into a stable form. After that, they're not managed again. The area would be blanketed with erosion control blanketing after the combination of mechanical removal, stem injection, cut and wipe treatments, and some limited foliar treatment, which would be in out years, not the initial work. The blanket is a native seed mix, as specified on the plan, is placed on any disturbed soils from the mechanical removal, and then the erosion control blanket is immediately applied. So there's sort of instant stabilization of the embankment. As soon as the invasive species are at a level of about 80%, which is usually within the first year, then an intensive replanting program, which you can see with hundreds of shrubs over this approximately 30,000 square foot area, as well as considerable native grasses and forbs. We have the opportunity to use some species, as we're going to be down in some of the wetter bottomlands here. So we can use species like blue lobelia, cardinal flower, swamp milkweed, and those shade-tolerant whitewood aster, which a lot of times when we're working in these hot, dry coastal areas, we're not able to use those. So substantial diversity here with the restoration planting, substantial opportunity for the improvement of wildlife habitat throughout this area. There is one typo that I wanted to mention it with regard to management of the bank. There's a total of 16 smaller diameter black cherries, and you'll note it's called out in red because this was something we were still working on when this was submitted back in March and didn't get a chance to take that out. We are not proposing to manage 16 of the cherries. That's the total number. The actual number would be 6 to 8. And the reason for that, as you've seen in other projects, in fact, we actually provided an example on that same page, on page 7, where you'll see the 16 in red. When these black cherries and oaks grow up and get into a very unstable form, they are subject to wind throw. Black cherries in particular tend to grow more laterally in these high salt areas that both shades more of the ground cover, allowing or eliminating a lot of other growth that would otherwise be in that location. And again, as they get larger, they're more and more susceptible to wind throw. So we found, and as you can see in the image on that page, just down the road on Battlefield, you can see where we were. Actually, I think this was the first time this activity was approved in Chatham many years ago, and the black cherry responds very well. Black cherry in particular puts out a more dense root system, helping anchor it to the ground and prevent wind throw. And also, you're just reducing the overall sail effect of the tree, lowering its height. We would propose to manage it at about 8 to 10 feet, which is a very stable height and allows considerable growth and development of fruiting bodies, and should ultimately allow that plant to last much longer in this high energy or high wind, high salt spray location. So to be clear, we'll get this corrected and sent over later today. It's 6 to 8 black cherries only that are proposed to be coppiced, because we've identified some major structural deficiencies with those 6 to 8 trees. Not that 16. We'll correct that. I think overall there's tremendous, as I mentioned, tremendous opportunity for wildlife here. We're preserving a limited area of the existing lawn that's there for the use and enjoyment on the plan. There's really no other activities along the shoreline in the 50 or 100-foot buffer areas. But at this point, unless there's immediate questions for me, it might make sense for David to just talk a little bit about the driveway realignment, which comes in from the inland wetland on the other side in the outer buffer area there in the 50-100.
Okay, thanks, Seth. And Dave, just before you start, I just wanted to follow up quickly, Seth, on the note about the black cherries. So there are no oaks proposed to be coppiced. Is that correct?
That's
it's just
correct.
the black cherries?
Yes.
And 6 to 8. Can you mark the locations of those on your plan so that we know which of the black cherries are being proposed for coppicing?
Sure, they're saplings, so they're generally quite challenging for engineers to locate, but we can give you the general location, or it might make sense to review that in the field with the agent.
Well, that's what one of the places we're going is we're going to be asking, we want to do an on-site visit to this property for a number of reasons, and looking at the bank is one of those reasons. Are the black cherries that you're talking about managing largely located on the bank?
Yes, they're exclusively located on the bank to the harbor.
Yeah, I've seen them. I walk there a lot, and I've seen how they do tend to grow horizontally, partly because of the steepness of the bank. Mm-hmm. So I guess I was wondering, when you coppice them, what prevents them from continuing that growth pattern, since they are growing out of the side of a fairly steep embankment?
Yep, good question. They will continue to have somewhat of a slope, but we have seen in practice on the other nearby sites, and I believe you can see some of those from Battlefield Road. If you look up to the right as your back's to the water, you can see a number of clusters of black cherry, which were treated the same way, I want to say 8 or 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so it's just an interesting neighborhood reference point there, and they're doing quite well. So I think it's the way that the physiologically the tree responds. It actually noticeably puts on there's a saying in arborism in general, saying which sort of as is below above, so shall be below, and you'll see a mimicking of the multi-stem trunk in additional root material that is below the soil, if the tree's dug up. Otherwise, you won't see it. And we have seen in practice that they do not take as much of a horizontal pattern. It's probably a combination of less shrub layer competition with the invasive species, and there's also many trunks, many stems rather, which will eventually develop into trunks of the trees, and so there's plenty of surface area, and the tree does not need to. Will it have more branches on the landward side? Yes, I would expect that. Mm-hmm. That's a very typical shoreline adaptation, but we've never seen a multi-stemmed cherry reach in the landward direction. In fact, there are some other, if we're going to do a site visit, there are some other landward, shoreline, more mature cherries, which were cut at some point historically, and you can see they're growing straight up.
Okay, interesting. That's great. And there are just to be clear, there's no other trees. There's the invasive sycamore maple that's marked for removal, and And is that it for proposed tree removal?
No other
in
native
this-
species are being proposed to be removal. There are some white willow, which are down in the wetland, which we would recommend removal of. It's a rather aggressive exotic species. It's ultimately to the discretion of the commission. That's our recommendation, because it'll help to enhance the habitat in that area, but it's
Okay.
discretionary. Sorry.
Okay.
Janet, may I chime in?
Yes,
while
go ahead.
on the Topic.
Yep.
So is it possible? I know that some of the trees may be so small that they're hard to locate and find on the ground. I think, as is required in our NOI checklist, like pretty much any sort of tree that is proposed for removal to be marked on the plan. And I guess I'm echoing that today, is if even non-native and native species. So you just said that no native trees will be removed, but how many other non-native trees are proposed for removal? Can you mark that on the plan?
Sure. We've generally interpreted saplings because there's a specific definition at DEP between saplings and trees. So we've generally not marked saplings because they aren't trees yet. But we can certainly field locate them and give you general locations on the bank. But the willows are larger, and those can certainly be field located if they aren't already.
I think it's just clear to put it all on the plan, and if it's hard to locate the saplings, then you guys, I know you can figure out a way to mark it on the plan that makes it clear.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, that's Tom.
Yeah, I want to congratulate the gentleman for his obviously recent graduation from law school by distinguishing types of trees. I find it's a little bit of a reach, I think. Did not call a sapling a tree.
Oh.
I was going from the DEP definition, which does specify a difference between sapling, and I have not gone to law school, but thank you.
Okay, David, you're up.
Yes, David Clark here. So as part of this project, and the owners have taken a look at the relationship of the guest house to the main house and instituted some changes to the landscaping, and it's still ongoing. We just received a revised landscape plan on Thursday of last week, so I'll be asking for a continuance so we can incorporate those changes. But fundamentally, right now, they didn't like the close proximity of the parking area for the guest house to the main house. They want some degree of separation there. So what we're proposing is a separate driveway extending past the existing barn and creating a drive under, basically parking garage under the guest house. That involves a small portion of the NDZ, I think 88 square feet. The rest of it is the 50 to 100. There are approximately 5 trees in that area that would be removed as part of this. We need a retaining wall on the east side to limit the amount of regrading, because mostly everything on the east of the guest house will be a naturalized area for the most part. Driveway will be pervious. As a backup, I am proposing a catchment to 3 subsurface leaching chambers. Just as a backup, again, the driveway will be of a pervious surface. And that is really the extent of the changes to the original application.
Okay, well, that answered my first question, which was when I went back and looked at the last amendment, number 3, and recalled that we were so excited about the overall reduction in the hardscape by the reduction in the size of the driveway, that certainly I didn't notice that the guest house was then separated and didn't have parking right next to it, and wondered, whether that had been taken into account. But apparently that's the reason for this today. So yes. You explained that. So you just said a drive under garage in the guest house. Is that the guest house is at least 2/3 completed. Is that, when I looked at it, didn't notice that there was a garage integrated into it.
There wasn't, and so if this was a consideration last fall, they certainly would have included it in the last amendment, or simply if they're anticipating refiling, as we have done now, they would have cast what's called a cold joint on that side of the building to make construction of that easier. As it stands now, it adds some expense in that not only does it have to be excavated out, they have to saw cut the foundation to provide access to the lower level for a vehicle. And they're well aware of those expenses, but they feel that this design lends them the separation and the privacy of the two dwellings that they wish to implement.
And so on looking at the coverage calculations, so Callie, can you put that back to the plan? As you heard, David, we're going to be, you're asking for a continuance. We're going to be asking for an on-site to walk through. One of the issues is that the driveway in this area is not staked. So it was hard to get a clear sense of what was where and where it was crossing over lines. I recognize that it's a very active work site, and to the extent staking was done back when this was first filed, it's no longer there. There's trucks parked in where it is now, that area, and a retaining wall, and so that led to the conclusion that having an escorted tour of the site would be helpful in terms of understanding where this proposal crosses the lines. Sorry?
We'll be refreshing all the stakes too.
Okay. All right, great. So the 88 square feet is in, Callie, can you scroll up just a little bit? 88 square feet of increase in the NDZ is where the driveway, up a little bit. Yeah, the driveway crosses from the spur off the existing barn and comes up to the house. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And then an additional 1,900 square feet in the 50 to 100. Is that?
1,800. So altogether, it's about 1,900 square feet of impervious surface.
Okay. And I'm interested in, you said that the proposed driveway is going to be pervious, but I did note in the work protocol that it's calling for two underlayment layers of asphalt. And I honestly can't say I've seen this before, so I'm wondering what that is and what impact that has on the ability of the driveway to act in a pervious manner and filter stormwater.
That's in my narrative?
Yeah, it's in the work protocol.
I will check with the landscape architect. I know we proposed that for the main driveway because of it's relatively steep.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it was called out for this one, but I will find
Well, that
out.
was one of my questions. Because I don't have the original plan, and the original driveway is not quite available to me easily. So that is a method that's being proposed for, or is approved for, the main driveway.
Yes.
2 courses of asphalt are
not
proposed over. Yeah.
That wasn't what was proposed for the entire main driveway. It's just the area of the main driveway where the grass strip is going up the hill, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, I believe, was. But I'll confirm that.
Okay. Other questions from other folks while I'm double checking my notes here? Other commissioners, questions, comments?
Bob Rawls. Yeah,
Yes, Bob.
a bunch of questions, but I think they probably should wait for the on-site, but is the barn being removed?
No,
It is not, okay.
no, no.
Okay. And yeah, whenever we finally figure out which parts of the driveway have this asphalt and which parts don't, I think it should be marked on the site plan so we understand that.
Yep. Yeah, I have a bunch of questions about the grading that's going to be required to put in a drive from the barn to the guest house, because at the moment there are steps and a retaining wall there because the slope is pretty significant, but that's probably best answered on site when we're standing there looking at it. Can you clarify, David, the trees that are proposed for removal? I know you said there are 5. They are not marked. So can we have them flagged in the field? Can we have the trees that are proposed to be removed marked on the plan?
Yes.
And I guess a tree inventory is what I'm asking for, a list of the trees, their size, their species, so that that's clear which trees are coming out.
Yep.
Okay.
I can do that.
Okay. And Callie, if you can go back to the site plan, please. David, you provided 4 profiles, and only one of them is shown on the main site plan, and that's AA. If you scroll down, or maybe it's up, where you get to the 4 profiles that are shown, the 4 cross sections, AA through DD. There we go. I was trying to understand. So AA is marked on the site plan, and that's the coastal bank just below the proposed fire pit. And I can see the slope there. But the other 3 are not, their locations are not shown on the plan, so it was a little hard to tell what they were.
Well, I did provide location sketches along with the profiles. I figured that was sufficient to.
Well, this one I can tell, BB, a bit, because it's showing the proposed fire pit. So this is just showing how the slope of the bank begins to level off as you move in an eastward direction away from
Yes.
Stage Harbor and over toward the wetland. Okay, I see that. Then Callie, can you go to the next one, just so I'm clear? This is CC.
That's off the east side of the main dwelling.
And heading toward the ditch.
Yes.
Okay, and the last one, Callie.
That is to the east of the guest house. Again, heading towards the ditch.
Okay. All right. I just was confused. I wasn't sure about where those last 2 were actually located.
But I can easily add those to the site.
Yeah, that would be
because
great. Thank you.
You've asked for the trees to be marked.
Yep. All right. Other questions, comments? So I have a question that goes to both of you while I'm thinking of it. Seth, you mentioned in your narrative on the restoration that part of the reason that this project is being done is because of some significant erosion on the coastal bank. There's evidence of erosion, and yet the project narrative says in a couple of different places that there's no visible sign of erosion on the bank. So, and the familiarity I have with that bank, I've not noticed any significant erosion. Is there areas of the coastal bank where erosion is a problem more than in other areas?
Yeah. Yes. Far to the east, on the other side of the creek, there and certainly along the neighbor property to the east, as you go to the rock revetment, there's some active erosion in that location, and I think what we're trying to communicate in the land management plan was that the deeper rooted native species which are proposed here will do a much better job at preventing erosion. We don't feel that there's any structural elements needed with this intervention, simply a native plant community given the slopes and the fact that most of the bank is presently stable. It trying to prevent that active erosion from encroaching further onto the property. So we can,
Okay, I get it. So it's largely preventative in terms of
Yes.
Addressing erosion problems.
get the deep roots in now rather than have to use something like fibrils or sand-filled envelopes or something later.
Yep, okay, got it. Anybody else? Bob, Joe, Tom, questions, comments?
This is Kits here. When I was there on Sunday, there seems to be quite a bit of erosion kind of in front of where the pool is going to be. Just from recent storms, it looked like. So I don't know what to do about it, but it's definitely happening because the sand is very loose there.
It's a good point. April was a very stormy month, and I have not been there following April. This was submitted back in March, but that would be a good thing to look at the site visit. We'll certainly take a look at it in advance of the site visit. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Other participants? Anybody have comments or questions? David, when were you thinking would be a good time to try to schedule an on-site, and when would you suggest this be continued to?
Well, for the continuance, I was thinking August 12th. I've got some things to work out with the landscape architect.
Okay.
So anytime between now and then for the on-site.
Okay, all right.
I guess it would be, I can make myself available. So, I think most of your questions would probably be towards Seth. So I'd work around Seth's schedule on this one.
Okay.
Is it possible, Callie here, is it possible, David, to schedule the on-site, but also have some staking on the property so that staking can be in place during the on-site?
It will be done before the on-site.
Okay, I wanted to give you enough time to put out the stakes.
Yep.
If you needed to talk to your client or whatever you needed to do.
Yep. Yeah, I can get those stakes in probably by the end of next week. So anytime after that would be fine with me for an on-site.
Okay, well, we'll look for an on-site sometime the week of the 20th, perhaps, or the 27th, well in advance of the next hearing date of the 12th. Does that work for everybody? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so then do we have a motion to continue this to August the 12th?
Bob Rawls moved to continue to August 12th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote to continue to August 12th. Commissioner Kish.
Aye.
Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Commissioner Delvecchio.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's continued to August 12th, and we will be scheduling an on-site in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is notice of intent, 159 Sea Pine Road. David Hall, Hanover Company is the applicant, and Diane Denby is the owner, SC10 3416. Proposed demolition of existing dwelling, construction of new dwelling at 159 Sea Pine Road, Assessors Map 11K, parcel HC13.
Good morning.
Yeah, Riley of David Hall. Unfortunately, David Hall's employer was shown as part of the applicant, but the Hanover Company is not part of the application. It's just David and his wife Meredith.
Okay, got it.
All right. So I'd ask Dave Clark to just run through the issues as we see them, and then we can talk about them.
Okay,
David.
Before you get started, David, Callie, if you can pull up the plan, we'll be able to refer to that as we go along.
Just give me 10 seconds.
You got it.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for that, what I will say is that this is a unique situation because of the if you've been to the site, the area of the lot between the road and the house, there's a swale quite low, and because of the change in the floodplain in 2014, that swale, which is certainly not a wetland or contain any wetland vegetation, is now in the floodplain. So I just wanted to point that out before we got started.
And that explains why the house is significantly further to the water than other houses in the area because of the swale.
That's correct. Yeah, the house was built 35 years ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so there's the plan, David. Will you just run through it for him, please?
Sure. So the property is located on Crow's Pond, which is part of the Pleasant Bay ACEC. An existing dwelling on the site, as you know, and the proposal is to demolish that and build a new structure. Given the constraints that Bill just mentioned, without significant regrading of the site, we kind of locked into the location from a construction point of view, and also from the views that the current house has. Right now, the house has views out towards Fox Island, out to the outer beach. And we have moved it back a little bit for about 2/3 of the house, but we still moving it back any further, we would lose those views. That being said, there is an increase in the size of the house over what's there now. And really the only resource area we're dealing with is the floodplain. We have a coastal bank that's revetted, so it really is not performing any functions other than a vertical buffer to storm waters, and that revetment was constructed back when the floodplain was down at elevation 10. The floodplain now is elevation 12, which, as Bill said, changed in 2014. If we had done this project before July of 2014, we would be entirely within an upland area. We would have over 30,000 square feet of upland area, and really the only issue would be the setback from the revetted bank. But we've got to deal with what we have today, which is the floodplain. The existing house has a full foundation, and it has no flood vents. It's not been constructed to FEMA standards. This house will not have a basement, the new house, and will be constructed to FEMA standard with flood vents to allow storm waters to enter the crawl space and leave after the storm. The floodplain that's on the rear portion of the lot, or between the house and the street, is nearly entirely on this lot. It does not extend to the lot to the west, and it's just a little bit of it extends to the lot to the east. And so really all the impacts of development in the floodplain are limited to this lot. The remainder of the lot shall remain as it is. We don't foresee that the redevelopment and the expansion of this house will have any impact on the performance standards or the floodplain itself, and certainly won't have any impact on the revetted coastal bank. As I said, there is an increase in site coverage of about 1,300 square feet, and a restoration mitigation plan was submitted as part of the package. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Madam Chair, we also have Emma Vauteur of Blue Flax Design, who's working on this project. I don't know if you want to hear from her at this point or not.
Sure, let's get a full picture of the proposal, and then we can.
Good morning. It's Emma Vauteur here with Blue Flax.
Good morning, Emma.
Good morning. So our plan is proposing the mitigation for the increase in structure in the form of both restoration and invasive species management. And we're making a distinction between the two just to break down the two different areas that we're dealing with. The total is 2,640 square feet, and that's the area that's noted in the yellow-green color on our plan. But there is an area of existing natural vegetation that's on the coastal bank. It's heavily invaded by bittersweet and other invasives. And then secondly, also included within that yellow-green area is the area of lawn and typical landscaping that will be removed and replaced with more naturalized vegetation along the top of the bank. So we've broken down those numbers for you. The subtotal of the invasive species management area is 1,240 square feet. And then the restoration of existing lawn and landscaping is 1,400 square feet. And then as noted on David's site plan, there is even though there is a revetment on this coastal bank, there is an escarpment along the top of the revetment, and that's mainly due to the presence of the invasive vines. There's a lack of dense fibrous root structure that's typically provided by native grasses and native shrubs. So by removing the invasive vines, will allow the native understory vegetation and native shrubs to root in and stabilize that upper part of the bank. There is Asiatic bittersweet, vine honeysuckle, English ivy, Scotch broom, and rugosa rose all growing along the bank. And so that will all be removed, and it will be selectively treated with an EPA-approved systemic herbicide, and that will be a selective treatment. There is some native vegetation. We're not dealing with a very large area, and there's not very much native vegetation, but that which is remaining, it might be regeneratively pruned or flush cut depending on the condition after we remove the invasive vines. And the regenerative pruning is just to really promote a healthy growth structure and regeneration. So we have made a specific note of an area. There's a small stand of existing bayberry on the top of the bank that's currently being pruned, and we'll need to flush cut that to remove the vine honeysuckle and other vines that are growing in it. But then we would like to allow the bayberry to regenerate and maintain that 3-foot height, which is existing. And we would do that using best management pruning practices. But we've made that note specifically because of previous feedback from the commission that you would prefer to see specific pruning protocols in place rather than permitting a whole view corridor. And there is a view from the deck to the northwest that's being currently maintained that we'd like to continue to maintain. And so after invasive species are removed from the coastal bank, the bank will be blanketed with a biodegradable coconut fiber erosion control blanket and seeded with a mix of native grasses and wildflowers. And the blanket will hold the soils in place while the grasses establish. The lawn and mulch beds along the top of the bank, as well as any ornamental species, will be removed from mitigation areas. And they'll all also be seeded with the native grasses and wildflowers. And then the restoration areas will be planted with 139 native shrubs, as well as 27 container-sized switchgrass. And we'll be doing follow-up invasive species management over the course of the next 3 growing seasons to ensure management of any invasive resprout. We'll also require temporary irrigation on the restoration plantings for 2 to 3 growing seasons while they establish. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the vegetation management.
Thank you, Emma. Is it fair to characterize what this is proposing is in the way of a installation of a vegetated buffer strip that will run along the top of the bank and a little bit and landward to
Yes,
protect that?
absolutely.
That's what
Yeah.
this is about. And you're not proposing, there's nothing being proposed at all for the area on the other side of the house, the existing swale, all of that which is currently planted will remain the same?
Will remain, yes.
Okay. Okay. Questions from commissioners, comments?
Yeah, Bob Rawls, I have a
Yes, Bob.
few. Actually, Emma, you mentioned the view corridor, which I didn't quite follow. There's an existing, is that shown somewhere on?
So there's not an existing view corridor that's permitted, but they are currently maintaining a view to the northwest. And so that's historic pruning. It's been done for a very long time. And what we'd like to do is put a protocol in place to maintain the existing view. And we'd like to do that without creating a wholesale vista corridor area. So the way that we've designed this is to place the taller vegetation to the side of that bayberry so that there are lower species planted around the bayberry. So we would be essentially creating a natural vista and allow that to naturalize without having to prune except for that existing bayberry that is currently being pruned. Does that clarify your question?
Well, to some degree, but we have to be. It'd be good to be a little more specific about where that view corridor or desired view corridor is by showing it somehow. I guess you're on your plan, on your landscape plan. I think there should be some indication of what you're trying to protect, preserve in terms of the corridor, so that
Okay.
there's no confusion about it.
We can certainly show that on the plan. I was basing the specific note based on previous feedback. Just we heard before that creating a view corridor can cause concerns in the future if there's a future change in property ownership. But
Yep.
I'm happy to show it on the plan.
That's true generally, but this particular location, this site has no existing trees that are in the area and none are proposed. So it's not the kind of a view situation where you're dealing with pruning trees. You're proposing pretty much everything I see as proposed here is relatively low growing. Is that?
We do have some taller vegetation, but it won't need to be pruned in the future. Everything will be naturalized.
Okay.
So we're not, if we do show a view corridor on the plan, it will not indicate future pruning except for on that stand of bayberry. But we can, I think it makes sense to put it on the plan and verify that.
Great,
So we will
thank you.
do that.
Okay. Sorry about Bob jumping in. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. And so also just one more question on mitigation. And on the right side, seaward side, on the right side of the house, there's no mitigation. There's a no mitigation area. I'm just trying to figure out why it was.
That's existing vegetation that there are native trees and shrubs. There's actually a really large stand of existing bayberry and other natives in there. And so there's no invasive species management that needs to occur. And so we're just connecting to that naturalized area.
All right. So there's just none needed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have other questions about the site itself, not I guess it'd be for David. Will there be any fill brought in during this project?
David Clark here. There will be a considerable amount of fill being brought in to fill in the old footprint of the house, because under FEMA regs, we're not allowed to have a basement here. So all that has to be brought up to existing grade.
Right.
Other than that, around the perimeter of the house, just standard backfilling. There's a little bit of fill for 2 parking spaces on the right of as you come down the driveway before you get to the house, you see a retaining wall there. That's really the only material that could be considered fill. And it's really, it's not material that has to be brought in. It's material that's kind of being shifted around from to the further towards the water to the left, where we show another retaining wall. So we're just moving material around within the floodplain.
So to stay out of the floodplain, you won't need any additional.
No, well, we're still in the floodplain. Unfortunately,
I mean, to keep the house above.
above the floodplain. No, we can simply do that by setting it on a properly designed foundation. So the foundation is set, I think, 8 inches or 9 inches above the floodplain. So the first floor will be substantially higher than the floodplain. So really, the only thing that'll come in contact with stormwater is the concrete foundation.
Right. You're saying that 2,200 square feet of asphalt driveway will be removed. Will there be any asphalt left, or
there's really no. It'll be a gravel or pervious driveway in its entirety.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Other questions or comments from other commissioners?
Clark here.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
Thank you. I noticed when I was out there yesterday that there appears to be a substantial amount of sand and cobbles eroding from underneath the revetment and appears to be smothering the salt marsh in the middle. Matter of fact, if you put that diagram back up, right where it has lot 13 written on it, that's about the area where I noticed it appeared the salt marsh was being smothered. And I thought that this is certainly a problem that would need to be addressed, hopefully.
I will take a look at that. I'm not aware of what you're talking about, but I can certainly do a site visit and take a look.
Yeah, that goes to the assertion in the narrative that this coastal bank is not a sediment source. So I guess two questions. One that Tom just raised is what's happening underneath it, and is that being pulled out? And the second is, do you know whether historically there was ever any requirement of nourishment at this revetment?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can look that up.
Yeah, what particularly caught my attention was the fact that the material moving out from under the revetment, or what I think is under the revetment, that's my speculation, was that it was multiple size. I mean, it was from fine sand all the way up to cobbles that were considerably larger.
Okay, other questions, Tom?
No, I have my usual no disturb zone issue, but that's, I think everybody's aware of that.
Yep. Other questions from other commissioners?
Del Vecchio here, Janet.
Go ahead, Bob.
The lawn area in the NDZs, so that's going to be totally removed, and the plantings are going to be replacing the lawn, correct, Emma?
Yes, this is Emma Votor. So the lawn will be removed from within the area that's shaded on our plan. We are leaving a small section of lawn just so that they can access around the side of the terrace, just to be able to walk around the circumference and do any maintenance that's needed. But that's I believe there's a dimension on the plan. It's a 3 to 4 foot wide space so that they can get around, and then the remaining lawn and mulch beds will all be removed.
And that small portion of lawn, will that be irrigated at all, or just going to be left without irrigation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a good improvement. Thank you.
Other questions from other commissioners?
I have a question, Janet.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Callie. Yep.
Emma, real quick, if you're gonna be doing a revision to your plan to include the view corridor, is it possible to just put a call out to that area that Bob Rawls talked about earlier, where there's already existing natives there?
Sure.
Just so it's on the approved plan and it doesn't come up later, 2 years down the road. Just some sort of call out.
Yep.
I have a question for David. Is the proposed terrace dry laid?
I don't have an answer for you on that. But I will find out at the
Okay.
next meeting.
Okay. And how high, so there's a retaining, not a retaining, there's a wall that surrounds, that's proposed around the terrace.
Yeah.
And that continues into becoming a retaining wall along the driveway and in front of the parking areas. Is that what I'm seeing there? It's not marked as retaining
They're
wall.
not connected.
Right.
They're not connected. There's a gap, but then yes, there is a retaining wall along the westerly property line.
Of the same
provide-
dimension as the wall around the terrace, or?
Yeah, they're generally about a foot to 16 inches wide, and it's not a very high wall, so that doesn't have to be anything bigger than that as far as width.
And what is it about the slope, the existing grade that requires, it's relatively flat in that side area on the side of the existing house?
Yeah, and so that's why the wall isn't all that tall, but it's to provide a sufficient room to swing into the garage with the vehicle, because it's a side-loaded garage and not a front-loaded garage.
Mm-hmm.
So to get a vehicle around and into the garage, we need all the room we can get. So rather than cutting into that slope a little bit and just regrading it, we felt a wall was more appropriate.
Okay. Okay.
Bob Rawls, one more question about the lawn. Is that turf lawn or is that fescue?
That'll be a fescue mix. This is Emma Votor.
Is that indicated somewhere in your materials?
No, but I can make a note on the plan.
Add a note to the plan.
Okay.
Callie, questions?
I guess I have two questions, just piggybacking on something that Bob Rawls had asked to David. Approximately how much fill? I know you said that you're going to be using a lot of the existing material that's on the site, and you'll need to obviously fill in the footprint of the existing dwelling because there's no longer a basement. But aside from those two activities, how much other fill is going to be needed, like for the regrading for the driveway?
I can get you an exact number. I don't foresee it being a lot of material. We have approximately elevation 11.5 existing along the whole street side of the dwelling. And we're showing finished grades in front of the house at 11.6, 11.4. The only area where we need to bring it up to probably about 6 to 8 inches of fill is to create, I wouldn't even call it a ramp, but a gradual grade up into the garage, so we can get the garage slab just above the floodplain elevation to keep that dry. And that's very minimal, probably 6 inches of fill at the threshold of the garage down to existing grade about 10 feet out. So it's a very minimal amount, but I can calculate that number for you.
Okay. And then my last question was, the existing deck that's out there is constructed of wood material, right?
Yes.
That's what I remember. And so the proposed terrace, I know you said you were going to get back to us about what type of materials, whether it would be a dried laid terrace or not. Is it possible, if you're going to propose something that is different in terms of its permeability from that existing patio, is it possible to provide some sort of drainage calculations for that difference in permeability there, if one exists?
Oh, yeah. Oh, certainly, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I get it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure who answers this question. I guess maybe it's David or Bill. So I'm curious about the thought, the analysis that the homeowners went through in terms of, I understand the difference in the asphalt driveway coming up and the permeable driveway going down, but we're still looking at 1,300 square feet of impact in the non-disturb zone. And wondering, I understand the constraints, but the way that the house is currently configured, it looks to me from the plan like there was room to move the house, 10, 12 feet further back and to expand it on the eastern side a bit, to minimize the intrusion into the NDZ. And I'm wondering what the analysis was like and why we ended up with this.
Sure. I looked at this as more of, as far as wildlife corridors, from the corridors being from the street to the shore, so to the left and the right of the house. There are a dozen plus houses along this side of Crow's Pond, all right at the top of the bank, so there is really no existing wildlife corridor 25 feet from the bank, because all the houses are there. So really the wildlife corridors are to the left and the right of the house, and that's why we chose to squeeze the house and put the addition to the south. So I don't think, from a wildlife point of view, a corridor point of view, moving the house back really makes any difference, because you can see the house to the east is right there at the top of the bank. The house to the west is actually set back a little more than this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it changes the dynamics of wildlife moving across the top of the bank. I think Emma's plan really addresses any wildlife movement along the top of the bank and creating a vegetated buffer for that purpose. And the other reason about moving it back, as I said in the beginning, was the views. We do have views out to Fox Island and the outer beach. Moving it back will probably eliminate those views. And secondly, we're fighting that depression behind us. Moving the house back means more regrading within the floodplain. And again, I don't know if I pointed out that this is barely in the floodplain. The still water elevation for the Crow's Pond is elevation 10. And we have grades to the left and existing high points to the left and right of the existing house at elevation 11.5, 11.2, somewhere around there. So we're really only talking about a wave run-up elevation of elevation 12. So there could be as much as 8 inches of water flowing over this landform to fill the depression during a coastal storm event. So it's barely in the floodplain, and that's why we felt that what we're proposing really has no impacts. We're still allowing flood waters to go to the left and right of the house and fill the depression during a storm event.
And is that a dry well at the bottom of that catch basin? What is that?
That's the previous owner had installed. I imagine there was standing water there that interfered with their enjoyment of what little yard space they have that's usable there.
Do you know where it drains to? Is it just goes straight into the ground?
I'm sure it's just a gravel line pit.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I was just curious looking at that. Okay.
Yeah.
Del Vecchio here.
Go ahead, Bob.
Just to piggyback on what you asked about the terrace, Janet, the material that was going to be used to install that terrace. There is a small patio adjacent to that we don't know about the materials for that as well, and as well as the other walkway on the other side of the building, the materials for that particular walkway. I was just wondering if David knew the materials for those structures.
I don't, but I can get an answer for you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
This is Kits here.
Yes, Joe, go ahead.
I mean, we've been sort of dancing around the runoff question, but is there a proposal on what we're going to do with the runoff from the steep driveway and the parking area, the patio?
Well,
and then secondly, is there a need to have the Pleasant Bay Alliance have input into this?
David, I'll let you handle the first part. I think the drainage calculations will help with that.
Well, everything on the street side of the house, the driveway, the walkway, and half the house will drain to the low spot. It has no impact on any resource area. It doesn't have any impact on any neighboring property. As far as the water side of the house, the commission's already asked for how we're going to handle the runoff from the terrace or the materials. So I can provide details on that. We certainly intend to control all the runoff from the hardened surfaces, including the house on the water side of the house. But I don't feel the need to provide additional stormwater mitigation for the upland side of the house. It's the floodplain, but it's a coastal floodplain. It's not a stormwater floodplain like an inland floodplain.
So David, this is Joe again. The driveway is going to be canted a little bit, so it does drain into that low spot?
It already does now. So when we remove the material, it will continue to be sloped towards the right as you come down the driveway to the house. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I had another question.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
All this conversation about our favorite little pit out here has caused me to wonder, was this what you referred to as a swale? Given all the water runoff that would have happened naturally from the driveway and the surrounding areas, why isn't this swale actually a wetland that somebody has improperly drained in order to defeat it from existing? Tell me why that's wrong.
There's no evidence of that. It's somebody's yard at this point. It's been somebody's yard for decades, long before the adoption of the Wetlands Protection Act. I expect groundwater is pretty close to the bottom of that swale, but I didn't see any evidence of any wetland vegetation, which would still exist if it was truly wet. Well, my point was that the actually, I think, I don't remember whether it was Bob or Joe that mentioned it, but or perhaps the chair, was because of the existing catch basin in the bottom. In essence, it's drained it out, and for lack of better term, it's dehydrated the wetlands area, dried it out, so it can't exist. I can't see that happening in this instance. In that it's probably elevation 5 down there. You can see the 6-foot contour.
Yes, I can.
So I would say that catch basin is probably somewhere around elevation 5. I expect groundwater to be around elevation 2, 2.5 in this location. So like I said before, it is close, but I didn't see any wetland vegetation when I was out there. And certainly it would have been noticeable. And if a wetland did exist there at one time, it would be because of groundwater more than anything else. The septic system was put in clean coarse sand, so there's no impervious material there to create a groundwater, a perched groundwater situation. So I don't think that catch basin was put in to puncture an impervious layer to drain the area. I think it's just because the driveway and everything else is pitched that way, and all the water winds up there, and they wanted a place for the water to go and not puddle.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I think Bill makes a good point, but maybe what would be helpful is if we could get some old aerial photographs of the area, and then we could see what used to exist there. I don't know if others agree with me, but that would be my thought.
Well, I think the companion question to what the issue you're raising is, do we know when that catch basin was installed? I suppose some aerials would give us some evidence of that and what may have been existing before. But if it's pre-adoption of the Wetlands Protection Act, then we probably don't have much to say about it.
No, I agree. You make a very good point. I'm just thinking, I mean, when I was practicing back in the Stone Age, we used to collect aerial photographs on sites just to look at their history and get an idea of what's been done to them over time. And that's kind of the thought that popped into my mind as I was listening to various descriptions of this basin area, or swale as it's been referred to.
Yeah, we have some, not perfect, but some access to through Google Earth to some historical imagery that might be out there. We can take a look at that. So we can do that. We don't need to ask them to do that. We can, right, Callie? We can maybe do that.
That's correct.
Yeah, we have whatever Google Earth has on its historical imagery. We can pull up.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be adequate.
Okay, we'll do that.
This is Bob Rawls. I assume that this is not on any current official maps indicating that it is a wetland. Otherwise, you would have called it out, I assume, David.
Yes, we would have, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, well, Madam Chair, Bill Riley,
Yes, Bill.
I think the important thing to remember here is that before 2014, the floodplain was lower, and I don't think there's any evidence that stormwater, saltwater stormwater, ever entered the property. And so I appreciate Tom's concerns, and the fact that there's no substrate that would support a wetland. I don't think the concern is particularly reasonable, candidly. I also wanted to note that we're going to the Zoning Board of Appeals on the 23rd, and we're hoping, assuming this is continued, that it would be continued to the 22nd.
Well, how about that? That's the very date that I have written down here.
Well, there you go. Perfect.
The question ball goes back to David. the list of things that we've been talking about, the changes. Is that feasible to do in the next week?
Yep.
Prepare
Yes,
for, so
absolutely.
you can get them to us by the 13th in preparation for the, okay.
Also to Emma,
um,
does that work for you?
Yes, this is Emma. Yes, absolutely. We can get these in the next week.
Okay.
David Clark here. Regarding that depression, I just looked at the town's conservancy district map, which was first done, I think, in the late 60s and last updated in 1980. The only wetland that's shown in the Harbor Coves area is the wetland that is between Sea Pine Road and Middle Road, which is to the south of us. So it doesn't show a wetland in this location.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Bill Wright. I
Yes,
think
Bill.
those maps were actually done in the 70s. I'm not absolutely certain, but we'll get a date for you and let you know.
Okay. That'd be great. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we move on? So if not, is there a motion to continue this to July 22nd?
Overall's motion to continue to July 22nd.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote to continue to July 22nd. Commissioner Kitts.
Aye.
Commissioner Walls.
Aye.
Commissioner Delvecchio.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We'll see you all back here on the 22nd. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we won't actually see you, but you're right.
You see
Thank you very
us,
much.
we just don't get to see you because we can't turn on too many cameras.
Right. Just as well. Just as well. Take care,
Okay.
all. now.
39
Bye-bye.
Homestead Lane, Ann Poppleton, trustee is the applicant, and R. Poppleton Revocable Trust is the owner. SE 10-3412, proposed removal of non-native vegetation, replanting with native vegetation at 39 Homestead Lane, Assessors Map 15C, Parcel 21.
David Clark here. I spoke with Lindsay yesterday, and I believe he's communicated with Callie the additional information that was requested, and
Yep.
I think we're all
Yep.
set at this point.
We
Okay.
received it. We have it here. I reviewed it. It looks good to me. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the material submitted?
Bob Rawls, I just have I don't know if it needs to be done for this particular one, but something for Lindsay, and that is that when he submits letters, could there be a date at the top? in the
Yes.
header of the
Yes.
document instead of the down at the bottom being, a file name that has the date in it.
Yeah, actually, it's in the, it's also in his reference. I figured that out. REV 61820, I believe, means revised. June
Yeah, that's what I
18th.
mean, but it
But
should
that
be-
took a while for me to find that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I didn't have any issues or comments. I think this is, unless I hear anybody speak up, ready to go to the work session on August 5th for review of a order of conditions. Do we have a motion to that effect?
Yes, Bob Rawls move to work session August 5th or
Okay. Is there a second?
Clark, second.
Thank you. Roll call vote to continue this to the work session on August 5th for review and approval of the order of conditions. Commissioner Kitts.
Aye.
Commissioner Walls.
aye.
Mr. Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Votes aye. We'll get moving on that order of conditions.
Okay, the next one. The next one is 14 Pine Ridge Road, 14 Pine Ridge Road Realty Trust, Cynthia S., Paul D., and Samuel D. Dollinger. Swetland and Swetland are the trustees. SC 10-3413, proposed construction of an addition on a crawl space foundation, proposed deck expansion at 14 Pine Ridge Road, Assessors Map 8C, Parcel 24. I did not receive any of the requested materials prior to the hearing. I also didn't receive a continuance request, so.
Okay, we've had 2 continuances in this, which is a surprise considering that we were pretty close to finalizing and we were waiting for some revisions, and changes to the mitigation proposed, which had been agreed to in concept on site at an on-site meeting, but have not yet been submitted. Don't know what the problem is, could be anything. But unless somebody objects, my view is to continue this to September 9th work session to give the applicants time to sort out whatever they have. And we have, frankly, a full enough agenda already for our August work session. And since there doesn't seem to be any urgency in this, that would be my suggestion. Anybody object to that? Hearing none is okay. Is there a motion to continue this to the September 9th work session?
Bob Rawls moved to continue to September 9th work session.
Okay.
Clark, second.
Okay, roll call vote to continue this to September 9th. Commissioner
Janet.
Pitts. It's not the work
Janet.
session, it's a hearing date. I'm sorry, as I'm saying that, it's a hearing date to give them to the September 12th hearing to submit their required materials. Is that what you were about to say, Callie?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're continuing.
It's not a work session, it's a hearing date.
So,
Correction.
We don't have
September 9th.
materials yet.
I correct
September
my
9th
motion.
is the hearing.
Okay. Roll call vote to continue this to the hearing on September the 9th. Commissioner Kitts.
Aye.
Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Commissioner Delvecchio.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
There you go. Your thing lit up like you were speaking, but didn't hear it. Chair votes aye. This is continued to September 9th. September 12th, 9/12. Yeesh. All right, Callie.
Okay, the next item is certificate of compliance, 48 Scattery Road, Carolyn McDonald, SE10 3072. Certificate of compliance requested for demolition of a single-family dwelling, construction of a new dwelling, removal of invasive plants, and installation of a vegetated buffer strip. I recommend issuing the certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions D2, D3, D5, D6, as well as ongoing hand pruning to keep the invasive plants out of the mitigation area. This is a particularly odd one. It was issued back in 2015, and there's a discrepancy, like we've seen before, between the order of conditions and the approved plan. The order of conditions basically says that all of the plants in the aura should be native, but the actual approved plan shows that the foundation plants are shown to be as non-native. So that's the plan that they followed because that was what was approved. The foundation area is about 150 square feet. So I allowed the contractor, so basically the contractor followed the approved plan. And when they went to apply for a COC, I allowed the contractor to plant an additional 150 square feet of straight native plants into the already compliant mitigation area. So they took the square footage of the foundation area and added that additional plants to the mitigation area. I felt like this was a minor field change and it still protects the interests identified in the regulations in the Act.
That sounds like a reasonable resolution. Interesting when there's a discrepancy between an order and an approved plan. It's a detail that I think can be easily missed.
Yeah.
Now you're making me nervous thinking about.
No, I think that's why this commission in particular has really taken upon themselves to make sure that the approved plan matches the order of conditions, because you know, you hand a contractor an approved landscape plan and also the order of conditions, but when they directly conflict with each other, then it creates a lot of unnecessary issues.
Yep.
So I think we resolved it quite well this time.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the certificate of compliance?
Bob Rawls, motion to approve the certificate of compliance.
Is there a second?
Clark, second.
Thank you. Roll call to approve the certificate of compliance. Commissioner Kitts,
Aye.
Commissioner Rawls,
Aye.
Commissioner Delvecchio,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Certificate of compliance is approved. And that's it, Callie, right?
Yeah, that's all I have. You already made the declaration for the one new filing, and so the only thing left is a motion to adjourn.
Bob Rawls, motion to, in record time, adjourn.
Look at that, 10:46, baby. This is is there a second?
Clark seconds.
All right.
And
roll call.
also Clark seconds the comments by about how speedy this hearing has gone, which is certainly a credit to the chair.
Well, it's a credit to how better we're all becoming at working on this platform. And as the town goes forward with its opening plan, such as it is, which is not really a plan yet, but I know there's consideration being given to reopening town buildings and offices and provisions for in-person hearings. Something I think I would suggest we all keep in mind as we get to that point is that we are able to function pretty well on this. We've gotten over the initial hesitancy and bumpiness, and this is going better than I had thought. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not in any great hurry to go back to a hearing room. Roll call vote to adjourn. Commissioner Kitts.
Aye.
Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Commissioner Delvecchio.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are out of here. Thank you.